Rams house. Welcome into a brand new episode of the Rams Report presented by Prize Picks. Guys, play alongside all of us here at Chat Sports and get $50 in free lineups when you play your first $5 lineup with code HMA on America's #1 sports picks app, Prize Picks. On today's show, though, guys, we're going to be breaking down some breakout candidates for the Los Angeles Rams. I already gave you guys mine earlier this month. I gave you guys 3 on offense and 3 on defense. But today, we're taking a look at Nate Atkins of the New York Times of The Athletic, which is owned by the New York Times. So kind of both, I guess, really. We're going to take a look at his list and see who he thinks could break out for this Rams team. But before we do that, guys, I got to let you know, YouTube told me yesterday only 30% of our viewers here are subscribed. And that is bad news, guys, because that means 70% of you could be missing out on key Rams news. So make sure you're not in that 70%. Be on the right side of the ball here. Be in that 30%. Hit that sub button today, or really just help us grow that 30% and help make sure you don't miss any of the key Rams news or rumors that could be coming over the next couple of months. Who knows what Les Snead has in store for this team? It always feels like he's got something up his sleeve. Plus, we'll be covering this team all year long with weekly game day lives, and you don't want to miss a moment. So make sure you're subscribed, and let's get right into this thing while you hit that sub button with our #1 breakout candidate from Nate Atkins, Terrance Ferguson. This is a guy I absolutely agree with as a massive, massive breakout candidate. And I think there's a big question around Terrance Ferguson right now. Receiver 3, or is he just a tight end? Is he part of the tight end rotation? Is he going to be more used in these 13 personnel looks as the second or third tight end in this rotation? You can have arguments about whether or not you think Tyler Higbee's still tight end 2 behind Colby Parkinson. I don't really care. That's semantics at this point, to be completely honest with you. But Terrance Ferguson, I think, has a much bigger role to play arguably than Higbee and Parkinson. I think he might have a bigger role intended than either of those guys. Because I think there is a real world where Terrance Ferguson's use case is less pure tight end and more hybrid tight end receiver. This is something we've talked about a little bit, but it's something that Nate Atkins agrees with. Here's what Nate Atkins had to say about Terrance Ferguson. He said Ferguson essentially took Tutu Atwell's role as the speed receiver down the stretch last season. I agree with that. I think kind of shared it with Xavier Smith. And the Rams did little to replace Atwell this offseason, drafting only Miami's C.J. Daniels in the 6th round. And note on C.J. Daniels, he's not a speed threat. That's not really his game. A big reason for that is the excitement around Ferguson. The Rams hope an offseason of work in an NFL strength program rather than training for drills at the NFL scouting combine can catch Ferguson up enough physically to build on the 39% snap share he posted last season. And what I find really interesting about this is that last note there around Terrance Ferguson, the part about spending a full offseason in an NFL strength program, getting the strength built up that he needs to be a full-time contributor early. That might be part of the explanation for why he had such a slow start last year. Because, again, we saw at times he was so capable of being incredibly, incredibly productive. Obviously, he didn't total that, but we saw that in flashes, in moments, and the efficiency that you saw last season from him as well really indicates that he could be a huge part of this offense if given the opportunity to do so. And I think that opportunity is going to show up for him this season. Not really as a tight end as much. I think he's going to get used to as a true tight end, but I think he's going to see snaps all over the field. I really think that's the plan for Terrance Ferguson, is to use him as a hybrid weapon that lines up in line, in the slot, and even out wide. I think he's going to be a huge part of the plan for the Rams, and we're going to continue to talk about that, plus 2 other breakout candidates in just 1 second here, guys. But before we do, I got to give a shout out to the sponsor of today's video, America's #1 sports picks app, our friends over at Prize Picks. Guys, if you are a regular viewer of the Rams Report, you know I love Prize Picks. But if you've never heard of Prize Picks, if this is your first time tuning in, you have got to give him a try. If you love daily fantasy sports or you just want to make watching sports more exciting, give a try to Prize Picks. It is super easy to put together a lineup. All you have to do is pick from 2 to 6 players. You're selecting more or less on their stat projections. Here's one that I've got going, a little season-long lineup action for professional football, going with the less on Fernando Mendoza, the less on Jeremiah Love, and the more on Jordan Tyson. That's a 22-win 120, and you guys can easily tailor fade that with Prize Picks' social features. Once you've downloaded the app, just search up my username, Jackson Durham, and you can drop a follow, and you can see all of the latest lineups that I've placed and tailor fade them with just one click. And if you're brand new to Prize Picks, when you're downloading the app, make sure you use our promo code. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code HMA when you play your first $5 lineup to receive $50 in lineups. That's code HMA when you play your first $5 lineup to get an extra $50 in lineups with Prize Picks. The clickable link to download the app is in the comments and the description below. Let's keep going here. Again, I think it's as simple as this. Terrance Ferguson can, and I believe will, answer the receiver 3 problem, the receiver 3 question, something that we've discussed at length on this show for the Rams this season. As we've seen the picture of OTAs, as we've heard McVay talk about him, that's become clear to me that he is intended to answer that. That's why they didn't add in free agency. That's why they didn't go out and get somebody. Listen to what McVay had to say. If you missed this quote earlier this offseason, he said this before the draft. I do think he had a really good rookie season, and I think the best is yet to come. He's everything and that much more that I hoped he would be, and I had tremendously high hopes for him. I think that he's going to be a huge part of what we're going to do for years to come. Again, there's no loss of faith on Terrance Ferguson from the Rams just because year 1 was a little bit less productive than we as fans maybe expected. The Rams understand their offense is highly complex. They understood where Terrance Ferguson was at physically when they drafted him. They knew it was going to be a little bit more of a slow ramp up, but they also knew they had the horses in the tight end room to make up for that, and that Terrance Ferguson can take his step this season and maybe an even bigger one next season to becoming that full-blown leader in that room. But next, Blake Corum. Up next for this Rams team is the RB2 behind Kyren Williams. This was Nate Atkins' number 2 breakout candidate. And again, I absolutely agree. Corum made my list of breakout candidates just like Terrance Ferguson did. And here's what Nate had to say about our RB2. Corum isn't the pass protector or receiver that Kyren Williams is, and he might never be, but he continues to make strides in those areas to earn more playing time in an offense that wants to blur the run and the pass as much as the Rams do. Williams should continue to outsnap Corum because of his third down skills, but the rushing attempts should look much more like a 50-50 split, with Williams offering consistency and short yardage skills, and Corum bringing an explosive element on drives after Williams has worn down the defense. If he can stay healthy, Corum could push, for his first 1,000-yard rushing season this year, even with Williams' presence. And again, guys, we keep hearing about this, a 50-50 split. Because last season it was not a 50-50 split in the running back room between Blake Corum and Kyren Williams. It was heavily shifted towards Kyren. And that's how it's been the entire time that they've been a tandem. It has been shifted towards Kyren as the lead back, even much more so back in 2024. But last season, we saw so much growth from Blake Corum as the year progressed. Look at the first 10 games that Corum had. 75 carries, 341 yards, 1 touchdown, and he averaged 4.5 yards per carry. Over that stretch, he's averaging, 34 yards per game in the first 10. You go to the final 10, including his performances in the postseason, and it's immediately apparent. Much more involved in the offense with 96 carries over the final 10 games and much more efficient with his work, averaging almost 1.5 yards per carry more than he did in the first 10 games. Also found his way into the end zone 4 more times in the final 10 games than he did in the first 10. And he found a way to be a little productive as a receiver as well. He caught 13 passes over the final 10 games. Three or four of those, off the top of my head, I cannot remember, were in the playoffs. He had a role as a receiver in the playoffs as well. 3 catches, I know for a fact, against the Seattle Seahawks in the NFC Championship game. It was clear last season Blake Corum is ready to handle a larger workload than he had early on. And I think he could handle even more than the Rams were starting to give him towards the end of the season. It's apparent that he's incredibly talented. It's apparent that he's someone that needs to be involved for this Rams team to continue to maximize itself. There's so many mouths to feed here, but I think Corum is truly a valuable one who needs to get his workload if this offense is going to reach peak efficiency, or at least be as good as it absolutely could be. Third, and I got to say, I love Terrance Ferguson. I love Blake Corum. But this is the snipe from Nate Atkins. This is the one where I read this one and I went, Nate Atkins, you know ball, brother, because Kam Kinchens is his third and final breakout candidate, someone we did an entire video recently on breaking down how good this guy has been and can continue to be. And that video, might I add, that was before this team went out and brought in Myles Garrett, which... Man, that's not going to make Kam Kinchens any worse. I'm excited because you can probably tell, before we give our shout out to SeatGeek, I get fired up about this dude. And I think deservedly so, because I truly feel he is one of the most underrated players on this Rams roster. I think, this Rams team has a lot of heroes. This Rams team has a lot of superstars. And Kam Kinchens is one of the most unsung of them. He's been a ball hawk throughout his time here, especially against the Seattle Seahawks. That dude shows up in rivalry games. We know he hates them. And again, he is set for more growth this season than I think anybody realizes. Except maybe me and Nate Atkins. Here's what Nate Atkins had to say. Kinchens could be one of the biggest beneficiaries of the juice the Rams added to the pass rush and coverage spots. Kinchens was left too often, and this is such a great take from Nate Atkins, by the way, was left too often to be the eraser for all the mistakes at outside corner, where slender and younger players became targets for physical receivers and stretch run plays. As such, the Rams decreased Kinchens' playing time down the stretch to lean on physical and experienced safeties such as Quentin Lake and Cam Curl to try to stop the bleeding. McDuffie and Watson add not just physical coverage players to the 2 outside spots, but also elite run defenders. Their additions can give Kinchens and the coaching staff the confidence to deploy the free safety more in ways that play to his strengths, which are his coverage instincts and his ball skills. And with the arrival of Garrett, the reigning all-time single-season sack leader, Kinchens should be able to play downhill on tips and overthrows from distressed quarterbacks. Again, I think Nate is exactly right. I think that is so key in why Kinchens started to fade a little bit down the stretch of last season. It has nothing to do with him as a player. It has nothing to do with what he was doing, and everything to do with the fact that the Rams could not stop the run on the boundary. The Rams did not have the horses to do that, and they realized Kam Kinchens, that's just never been his game. At the end of the day, it shouldn't really have to be, in my opinion. He should not be asked to come stop stretch runs because our corners can't tackle anybody. So that's why you go out and get corners who are willing to be physical in the run game in Trent McDuffie and Jaylen Watson to allow Cam to do what he does best as well. It's going to be an incredibly complimentary addition. That rounds it out for the breakout section of today's video. I'm really excited about all 3 of those young players on this Rams team. So many stars, but so many rising stars as well. But before we get out of here today, I want to do one more thing. I want to react to a few of your guys' hot takes. In our community tab recently, I asked you guys to drop your Rams hot takes for the 2026 season. Told you guys I would react to them. And so that is happening right now. And if you guys want more of this, just let us know in the comments. We can do an entire video of hot take reactions. I think that would be pretty fun. But I won't do it unless that's what you guys want. So let me know in the comments that that's what you want to see, and we can get that going for you guys. But number 1, Myles Garrett breaks his own sack record. This was commented a few times, and I love it. And I think it's absolutely possible, because one of the things that people don't realize about Myles Garrett and his sack record, or I guess just don't really think about, is Cleveland was losing all the time last season. And Myles Garrett still found the opportunity to get 23 sacks in a single season. What can he do when he's playing with the lead? What can he do when teams have to pass against him consistently because they need to get back into a game against the Rams? And the only way to do that in a quick enough fashion is to throw the damn ball. So that QB's got to drop back. You can't just sit on the run and sit on the football and try to play possession like teams did against the Browns last year. That opens up a world of pain for Myles Garrett, in my opinion. That opens up a world of possibility for pain to be delivered by Myles Garrett, I guess I should really say, because, man, he's going to have so many opportunities to tee off. We know this Rams offense is going to be able to build quick leads and put him in positions to have success. I think it's very possible that he destroys his own sack record. Next, the Rams become the second team in NFL history to go undefeated all the way. This would be a 21-0 season, isn't it now? Or is it 20-0? Yeah, 20-0 with the 17-0 season. Man, that would be pretty unbelievable. The first since the Dolphins had achieved that. I'm not going to say I think it's happening, but I'm also not going to say that this Rams team isn't capable of doing it. I think there's been a lot of teams over the last couple years that have been capable, that have come close, but have not achieved it. Obviously, the Patriots were right there. You have the Kansas City Chiefs recently, who came pretty close. I think they finished 15-2 that season, but started, 12-0. There's been a lot of teams that have ripped through it. In the 17-game era, it seems harder than ever, however, to go undefeated. Could the Rams be the first to do it? I don't know that there's a team that's been better positioned. I'll say that. Next up, C.J. Daniels, receiver 3 by the end of the year. I don't know if I agree with this, and I think largely because Terrance Ferguson is going to play that receiver 3 role. I think that's going to be Terrance Ferguson's role to some degree, but I do think C.J. Daniels has a significant role in this offense by the end of the season. I do think he's someone that's going to ramp up a little bit. We've known throughout McVay's history, it does take rookies a little bit more time to adapt to his playbook. I see that kind of, framed as McVay doesn't like playing rookies, and I don't really think that's the case. I think it's more just young guys kind of struggle to pick things up. We obviously saw Puka pick things up very quickly in his rookie season and get a ton of work because of it. Can C.J. Daniels do that in a room that doesn't necessarily have the need that the room Puka had or came into had? I don't know. It's going to be tough for him to jump up to receiver 3 and get past Terrance Ferguson, in my opinion. Lastly, though, Davante Adams delivers a vintage season. I agree with this. I think he kind of had one last season, though, if I'm completely honest with you. He's third in the NFL in receiving touchdowns. He led the league in red zone touchdowns as well. He continues to be an incredible, incredible receiver. I think he's pretty underrated at this point. I think, obviously, he would be much more productive if he wasn't opposite Puka Nacua. At the end of the day, Puka demands so much volume. Puka is a high-volume receiver. That's where he's used, or how he's best used, is to give him a ton of receptions and let him go to work, because he can do so much for you after the catch. He can win so much on 50-50 contested balls. But Davante Adams remains incredibly productive and incredibly capable. So, yeah, he's absolutely capable of a vintage season. But I don't know that he's ever gone away, to be completely honest with you. I think he's just kind of been that guy the entire time. He's not at the height of his powers anymore, but he is still better than a lot of receivers could ever dream of being. Let's get out of here on today's show. Let's get you back to the rest of your Friday. We appreciate you hanging out with us. Hope you enjoyed today's show. And again, if you haven't hit that sub button, make sure you're on the right side of this percentage. Just 30% of our viewers currently subscribed. Don't miss Rams news. Don't miss Rams Noomers. Hit that sub button on your way out of here. And I'm going to see you in the next one. As always, let's go Rams.